Welcome, Vols and Lady Vols, to Power T Talk. From the Cathedral of Neyland Stadium to the fanatical landscape of college sports, we're breaking down the plays, the players, and the pride of the Southland. I'm Daniel, your host, here with my comrade and co-host, Zack. Grab your orange and white. Let's run through the T. It's time to give our all for Tennessee. This is Power T Talk. Zack, I want to say that we are the most influential podcast in the world. All it took was us dropping our first episode, giving our brief but informative review of Heupel's performance, and suddenly you look up and he's got an extension.
I know. I'm just glad Danny White's listening out of our millions of downloads. It's nice to see that he understands the real powers of the people. Yeah, I'm happy with it. I don't think the numbers have come out yet, nor do I care in 2025. I'm not worried about it. 2030, I don't think it was unintentional with Oklahoma getting a little bit hectic last year, despite the Alabama win that this was announced. I would say that there was a small factor into it, but 2030 fits with what college football is. I think this is Heupel's third official extension, if I'm correct. And you just have to redo the deals every 2 years. It's not like it was when Fulmers would come up with a year left and they would make a decision there. So I'm good with it. You know, it's probably going to be top 10, I would imagine, which is fair. I think this is the right thing to do. I'm happy with the decision, and I think Heupel's committed for the long haul. I don't see him being a pro coach at any time, and I don't think Oklahoma is ever going to be a factor as long as Bob Stoops is alive.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be enough of a draw, and I think it's just another way to kind of show support. Like, we're out there, there's attention on the program, on a good coach, on a coach that we like. The timing was absolutely hilarious after we did our Heupel check-in. And it's really just like, let's show our support for this guy and get this cleaned up and show some excitement, and then let's roll to the season. And I'm sure he sees it that way as well. He's like, yep, I'm signing on, but really I'm focused on Syracuse.
And money doesn't matter anymore. Not with Tennessee. It's with all the contracts, what White's done with the books. It doesn't matter. They're going to pay him whatever needs to be paid. I'm never going to worry about it. It's not like it was in, 2013, and they're trying to, get Charlie Strong $4 million a year and calling every booster. So I don't think that will ever be an issue. In 2030, that's a good number. I'm curious what the buyout will be. That's really the only thing I think about, even though I'm not concerned about Heupel long term. But, just some of the numbers we've seen, and Danny White's always thinking ahead. So I would be curious about if it's a James Franklin like number where it makes you drop your jaw, or if it's more in line with 25, 30 million. That's about it. Other than that, I'm good with everything.
Yeah, if there's a buyout, it's like he has to return all of his Adidas and his Nike gear or something like that. If he quits at a certain time, like, he can't choose one to keep. Before we jump into Vols, which I mean, there's not many things that would pause us from talking about Tennessee football. There is one thing that's going to pause us from talking about Tennessee football, and I think we're going to wind up at Joy, but I don't know that we're going to be there the entire time. I think we should talk about Lee Corso. I think we have to.
Yeah. Just a pioneer. Is that fair? I would say, like, I know he technically didn't invent anything, but he's the pioneer of pre-game football talk in America. Everyone kind of tries to emulate him. Never been duplicated, despite Derry Bradshaw's best efforts. I just think about, it's crazy how much he's been in my ears, because I played NCAA football, every version, every year, my entire childhood, and Ask Corso was a feature, I think, for 10 of the games. And just hearing, pull back on those reins a little bit. I still say that just in general talk, and the Ask Corso and the game day, his electricity, the way he just galvanizes people. We've never met him, but he just seems like somebody that immediately attracts everybody to him in a positive way. It's a loss for sure. It's not going to be the same. I know the last few years since the stroke have not been great, but it was never like he never lost the fastball in his analysis. It just was with the stroke. It just he couldn't quite get it out the way he wanted to. But his points were right, and he's not going to be Dan Orlovsky on the teleprompter. That's not what he was supposed to do. It's more fun to listen to Lee Corso with the pencil saying "Not so fast, my friend." It's forever iconic.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you can just tell by, like, how people are talking about him now, how gut-wrenching it is for people that and the twinkle in their eye they have when they talk about him. It's like, we get to see an awesome side of him, and we get to see the energy he brings, and I think, frankly, like, there's so many funny moments, and there's so many, like, stick it into a certain fan base and, like, twist the knife a little bit moments, but I think the most fun thing about it has been just, like, him kinda realizing that the time was dwindling on the show, and instead of, like, I don't know, you could just see him take an extra second with looking at the crowd, with letting the noise build, and it's just in a way that is like, "Oh, this guy understands what college football is about." And then you hear people talk about him, and you're like, it seems like he was even funnier and even cooler and even more entertaining behind the scenes, and not in like a he's a totally different guy kinda way, just like he was a probably a more full, less censored version of himself,
Mhm.
and I bet you it was the most fun thing.
It's insane that him and Burt Reynolds shared a dorm room.
Yes.
Like, maybe the only person charismatic-wise could outshine him. Burt Reynolds was his roommate, and I wonder what those frat Saturday nights were like after football, but, yeah, he's an icon. He's forever going to be part of college football, even more so than a ton of players, a ton of coaches, and the thing is, he's universal. Everybody's unless you're like, no offense to this program, UAB or something, like you have a Corso story, right? You have him, giving it to Tennessee, Florida, Alabama, or celebrating them, right? Wearing the smoky headgear, the Alabama headgear. It's gonna suck. And I know they tried with McAfee. I'm not gonna get into that. I understand why they did it, but it's no one's ever gonna replace him. And I don't think they're trying to per se, but it's gonna be weird not seeing him in the next few weeks.
I think I'm gonna be sappy for a second, and I think this is if ever there were a moment to be, right?
Mhm.
It's like I was talking to my son earlier. He's 5. He's a huge football fan. It's like he can't get enough. I was watching one of the Corso clips that's been going around, like the moments, and I think it was the one that Tennessee posted. And I told him, I was like, this weekend with him on game day in Columbus and the poetry of that, and frankly for me, the poetry of that's also where my son was born. And so like when they're showing the game day shots at certain angles, you can see the hospital my son was born in.
Mhm.
The combination of all of that, I looked at my son and I was like, there's a really good chance I'm gonna cry pretty hard this weekend. Just as like this is what this means. This is this guy. And he looks at me and he like leans his head on my shoulder and he goes, "Dad, it looks like you might cry right now." And I was like, let's not talk about it. Give me until Saturday and then
Yes.
I'll let it out. And then we'll, watch some football. And, I think Corso's a guy who also clearly feels stuff and isn't afraid to, and same with Kirk and others. And so we're gonna lean into it a little bit and almost thank goodness we have football right after where we can, there's a little dust in the room and then maybe a lot of dust and we move along from it. And I think we'll also get reminded of some of the funniest moments. And you and I independently landed on the exact same moment that we will never be able to get out of our brains in the best way.
It's the F-bomb.
It's
Houston
perfect.
Houston, SMU. It is perfect. I've watched it 4 times in the last week. It is the funniest pregame moment in sports broadcast television history. I thought about that. I had no problem saying that. I do not think it will ever be topped. I'm laughing thinking about it now. Just the way he says it, and we're not going to because we're trying to grow this podcast and we put no explicit on it. So just Kirk's reaction, I think it was Joey Galloway was there losing his mind, or was it Desmond? I can't remember either one, but it might have been Howard. But it just the whole scene of it, the Cougars fan base going insane, And he never suffered backlash for it because it's Lee Corso. You know?
Yeah.
Even in 2011, like, nowadays, not as big of a deal as it was in 2011, but still, that moment will never be topped for me in terms of pregame moments because everything's fake now. That was truly Lee Corso being genuine, being in his 70s, going, "I can do this because I'm Lee Corso, and it's gonna be fun."
Yeah, and I don't know. First of all, I just wrote down a note here that if we're gonna have the no explicit tag, I'm gonna have before we ever have my wife on, I'm gonna have to drill that into her brain, and so I'm just writing myself a note to let her know that. Um, the the thing about it is, it's one of those moments, and like you sometimes hear these in like oral histories about sitcoms and things like that. It's like, oh, we had all these funny jokes in the script, but the one that was the funniest was somebody cracked a joke live.
Mhm.
It's that you could
Yes.
try to write like this huge build up and Kirk does something funny and Kirk comes out in a different outfit this time and does a headgear pick instead of Corso. Nope. The funniest thing that ever happened was Corso saying mm, and just rolling with it. And everyone like their guts falling out from laughter. And then you have to cut to the game. It's perfect. And the fact that it's like building up to where they can't follow up on it, they can't clean it up. It's just the last moment of the show, and we'll see you later and enjoy the football for the day.
Second was, "That dog is ugly."
Yes, which again, obviously that holds a special place in our hearts as well.
Another phrase I use sometimes when I see a bulldog. But yes, I'll be like, "That dog is ugly." Just in that tone.
And I think, as ESPN, I think people, I also kind of go back and forth on how I feel about that program.
Mhm.
College Game Day's on. It's how I like to do it. But there's stretches of that show where I'm like, we're it feels like we've been talking about the same thing for 40 minutes.
You didn't
And
want
then
more mammal in your life?
I don't know. I don't know. Sources say. Then and then but with him, it was just like I could watch him go on about almost anything. I don't know, it's some weird combination of like the most genuine guy ever, but he's 5% away from saying something like in the Charles Barkley vein that you're like, I hope this stays between the mayo and the mustard. But if it doesn't, it's going to be really funny. And he loves football all at the same time.
He loved college football, and to him, it didn't matter about the cover 3, and that's fine. I have, you and especially in 2025, you can find that anywhere. He could do it back in the day. I think people forget he was a pretty solid college football coach. He wasn't the greatest, but he was pretty solid. And, you know, he could give you some analysis, but the way he could do it in such a friendly tone, the way he could do it in a way that didn't make you feel dumb if you didn't quite get it, I think is something that should be admired by us. Again, he grew the game. Game day is my childhood, your childhood. It doesn't even matter if I'm watching it. It's on Saturday at 10 o'clock. It just is. Even if I'm on my phone or I'm doing chores or Tennessee plays at 8:30 when it's supposed to be 7:45. Like it's on that Saturday morning. And I don't know if it will be as much without him. It probably will just because it's the staple of my Saturday morning ritual, but it's just not going to be the same looking up at TV randomly and not seeing him.
Yeah, I almost feel like my last thought on it, in some ways, I wish it had never had to slow down, but it's almost good in a way that it like we got almost like 50-50, like sometimes Corso, sometimes not in rears. Because if it had been like full-fledged Corso and then something happened to where he could not come back, or something happened to where it was like, okay, we can maybe get one more and then you're done. Like going cold turkey would be even harder, I think. Whereas like we all kind of knew that they had to pick this kind of thing to happen at some time. And I think it's happening in a pretty amazing way with a 1v2 matchup on the horizon. I don't know what better way to send him out.
It's going to be a lot of waterworks. I'm actually driving during some of it, but I'm recording it just in case, just so I can watch it back. It's going to be on there Sunday morning. I'm glad he's gone out on his own terms.
Yeah, for sure. I, I'm going to move us into thinking about Syracuse in a more specific way because again, we could we could go on about Corso, and I have a feeling we'll follow up and go on about him after the weekend, kind of depending on the rhythms
Yes.
of that show. We talked about what we want to see in the Syracuse game. We talked about what's on our radar from a Tennessee perspective, but I want us to get a little more granular on Syracuse's roster and Syracuse's approach and kind of what they're going to present us with for, frankly, a team that, you know, I don't know how they'll do in the ACC. We'll talk about it as we go with thinking about the playoff and stuff, but they're no slouch, I guess, is the starting point. And so, what are you seeing roster wise? And we can talk about the losses, but then talk about what they're going to be throwing at us come Saturday.
Yeah, I'll kind of start with last year. Really weird. They hired a defensive back coach, and they had this super elite offense, which was really surprising. I don't think people expected that. And Kyle McCord was fine at Ohio State. Wasn't a superstar though, and they ran him out of town essentially when you think about it. And I was really impressed when I watched them against Miami because I did watch that game. How well coached they were offensive side of the ball. Defensively was a different story, which is kind of weird because Fran Brown's defense. They lost a lot though from last year's team. 9 starters on offense. They returned 8 starters total. McCord was a gold mine for them. Losing him was a big deal. There was rumors he might try come back. He did not. Caught on in the draft. I think he's a free agent right now. They ran a lot of spread, medium throws, relied on quick reads. I like what you call it, a chain moving attack.
It's not a true air raid. Like when you look at the numbers, you think like, oh, this is going to be just like the air raid is what pops into my brain because the run game isn't as much a part of it. But really, it's not, and it's almost weird that it's happening under a defensive-minded coach and everything like that. And so, yeah, I appreciate that because that was the best description I could think of it. Is like we're never going to be off schedule, and you better buckle down because we got guys flying everywhere.
Right, and this year they brought in another transfer, Steve Angeli from Notre Dame, who famously came in the semifinal game when Leonard was in and out and played admirably, very admirably. Based off I'm not going to say I know my Steve Angeli film. I'm not saying I've watched some high school tape, but based off what I remembered and looking back, good athlete, seemed to process the game quickly, slow release, if I remember. It seemed like he was a little tick slow on the release here. They might incorporate more power quarterback run, I think, with his size. And it's going to be interesting at wide receiver because they lost their top 3 pass catchers. Now they got some talented ones from the portal and a couple guys that just in the program. And I think we can kind of move on there. Was my Angeli, do you think Angeli, whatever, Steve, you know,
Steve,
yeah, Steve, would you agree with me? Because I think you saw a little bit of him last year as well. That would be kind of accurate, like good athlete, but maybe slower release and but still could process the game.
a little more robot, like a little more robotic and kind of a long motion. Whereas I think McCord was like, the reason we're going to be ahead is because this is getting out of here quick.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's probably what NFL teams liked about him. If he didn't have the biggest arm, it was like he was going to find the guy because he was so quick, and he seemed like a quick processor as well. Angeli is more like he's going to hit the back foot, and he's got a good enough arm, but it's not like I don't mean gunslinger in the sense that McCord was reckless, but just in the sense that it's like quick release, the ball's getting there, and so they depart from that a little bit, and they lose a lot in the run game, but it's almost like they lost a lot in the run game because they really only gave it to one guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so they lost McCord, who led the nation in passing, I think. And then they lost 1,000-yard rusher in Allen. And so they have people who are just thrust into production, but they've had guys be really productive before, kind of all right off the bat.
Well, and what sucks for them is they lost their wide receiver. I think he was their second leading wide receiver behind Jackson Meeks. He went to the transfer portal, Pena. That kind of sucked for them. I don't think they were expecting that. I think they were really hoping to get him. They can put him number 1 and go from there. But that was a big loss. Now they have a guy that I think has a chance to be really good. Daryl Gill. He's a junior. Really came on strong the last couple of games last year. He put up about 570 yards last year. Over half his yards came in the final 3 games. He was a sprint guy. Actually
18 plus yards a catch, too.
6'3", so
Yeah.
probably can high point a little bit. He's a burner. They've got Justice Ross Simmons, who's honorable all West in 23, but he had hamstring injuries. They expect him to step up. And I reading their boards, which, not the greatest information. It's a nice feel about what they're looking for, from the fan base, who they expect. They think he's going to step up. And then they got Jonte Cook, who's a two-time transfer, but was at Texas and Washington, going to be the slot guy. Running back will be really interesting because
Hmm.
Allen was a true three-down back, very similar to Sampson. I think he probably got more overall playing time than Sampson. Yasin Willis is going to be their running back. He's a bruiser, 230 downhill, but only 36 carries last year. That is not a lot. So against this Tennessee front, that's going to be really interesting. I think they kind of would hope this would be game 2 for
Yeah,
them,
for
almost
sure.
kind of like us with Joey, just to see if everyone can get in a rhythm, get in a groove, figure out if you can rely on a couple guys. But this is the
They
situation they're
they
in.
have they have big tackles, like 6'7", 6'8", 330 range.
6'5", 325 average lineman. That's an
Yeah,
SEC.
it's an SEC line, but it's interesting, and this isn't me, like, knocking it, but it seems much more like these are gigantic dudes who are gonna pass pro line. They don't all seem athletic enough to get out there in their run game, and that doesn't seem like their offense.
Mhm.
And so, my anticipation and our defense, I don't know, maybe they've got it sorted out, but the back end I think, has a little bit of sorting out to do. If they're doing that thing where they are ahead of the chains, if they're on schedule, I think they're gonna go for it on multiple 4th downs and maybe even do it quick and say, like, "We're gonna pass pro enough to hold up, and we're not really gonna care about the run game as much, and if they're not sorting things out properly in the back end, then we're gonna try these receivers out and see if Tennessee can stop them." And so I would anticipate Angeli can be trusted enough, and then the receivers are talented enough that they're gonna try to go for it on some 4th downs, and I mean, I think we will be ready for it, but I think it's gonna happen early.
Coach press conferences. You don't glean very much overall. And then I'm reading through, just kind of curious on what Fran Brown said on Monday. And when asked about the offensive line, his exact words were, "I'm not sure," when asked how they were going to perform against Tennessee. I'm not saying that Fran Brown's a dummy or anything. I'm not saying Fran Brown's not having a little gamemanship. Don't normally hear that about your offensive line.
No, and it's like, maybe he's just one of those who's like, he's gonna be brutally honest, maybe that's not out of character at all, but it's one of those moments where if I'm a Syracuse fan, I'm like, "You coulda lied to us for a few days." Like, you just let me believe, man. And again, maybe he's playing coy, and every coach has their way of doing that, and so I think the offense is gonna put pressure on us. And we talked about it last episode. We're going to know some stuff after this game. It's not one of those that's just like such a walkover that we don't learn anything. I also want to the place that I think we can have success is our offense against their defense. And not because we know that our offense is going to hit on all cylinders right away, but because their defense was the kind of defense you want to face, and they lost some production on that side of the ball. And so, what are you seeing from them defensively? And you can go back end or kind of the front seven. And do you agree with me that there's some reason for optimism for our offense to get rolling a little bit?
Absolutely. They were a bottom 40 defense in a lot of categories last year. FBS, too. Just overall FBS, bottom 40. Uh, Gave up over 300 yards rushing versus Boston College. That's not something you like to see at all. They were gashed in the game, 117th in yards, opponents' yards per carry.
Hmm.
Their sack unit was average, but they lost their top 2 guys. They were average in takeaways. They were 122nd in the country in yards per play and 118th in opponents' points per play. This was a really bad defense, which again, they go 10-3 with a defensive coach.
I know.
And it's weird that was the case. A first year guy, maybe you could see that in year 4, year 5, you get the right quarterback. But a first year guy, something that they also have talked about a lot when I was reading some local beat reporters, they were terrible tackling unit. I didn't pull up any PFF numbers because I'm not paying $40 for PFF a month. Sorry, guys. No, I they just were not. not a good tackling unit. They really tried to work on that. They thought that that was a real big reason why they were bad. That didn't really bring in a ton of impact transfers. The top got transfer they brought in was David Reese, who I must say is, and I had to triple check this, an 8-year player.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He was part of Dan Mullen's first recruiting class at Florida. He is older.
I'll be honest with you. I I don't know how to place that. I have no idea.
He's older than four-time NFL Pro Bowler Micah Parsons, just to give you a little heads up there on
Man.
how long he's been in college football. Um, but he was all Pac-12 in 2023 at Cal.
Or 2011. We don't
Or
know.
20, I mean, him and Justin Harrell,
Yeah.
2006 Florida game.
Nice pull, nice pull.
Thank you, appreciate that. They've got another guy, Dennis Hawkes, has flashed, but he's had injuries. And then they've got Kevin Jabidi, who's coming off injury. He had some flashes last year as well. They've got some experience on the depth, but I just think looking at their overall line with the numbers, the fact they didn't bring in like a true defensive tackle prospect or
Mm.
transfer, I think we're going to gash them in the run game. Like I was talking to a buddy this morning. I told him I think even if this gets close, Tennessee can run for 250 easily, just and pull away.
Yeah, they allowed 5.3 yards per rush last year. I think it was bottom 30 in FBS, and we were top 30 at about 5 yards per rush, and it's like, that's the type of thing, like, I think we're gonna get downhill. They were also 125th in fourth down percentage allowed, and that could be a product that they just couldn't hold up in the trenches, and so if you were gonna go for it on fourth down, you were just gonna be in a favorable down and distance, and, I mean, I would love for us to run some tempo and go for some fourth downs, and I don't think Heupel minds doing that. I think we could have success doing it. The other I think there's strength on defense. We'll see about the front seven. I hope that it's similar to last year and we can have a ton of success. I think their strength, if anything, comes in the back end. And so it's actually going to be a nice test for our receivers. Like it's going to be a nice test for Matthews. They have Deuce Chestnut, who it's interesting. I don't know if it's more interesting than the eighth year player, but Deuce was a guy who was at Syracuse. He was productive from the jump, over 30 tackles from the safety spot 2 years in a row. And then he transferred to LSU. He didn't get a lot of playing time, transferred back to Syracuse and was productive again. And so he's a guy who's, he's been there and he clearly loves being there. And he was productive last year. For what they lacked in defensive line pressure, they had multiple safeties who had registered sacks and registered tackles for loss. And so they're not afraid to bring some heat. From a test for Joey standpoint, it's not going to be vanilla. They're going to bring some pressure, and I think they know they're going to have to. The one way to get us to not be able to run downhill is to get us behind the chains and test out our offensive line that's maybe still meshing. And so it's not that their secondary is going to be locked down, but I think it's where their strength is.
Yes, Deuce Chestnut, Evan Grant. They're two
Yeah,
start safeties. Grant plays more in the box. He had 8 tackles for loss, which for a college safety is
pretty
doing.
impressive.
Yes, it is. Chestnut played a significant amount of star last year. They're moving him. It's like their ball hawk guy, letting him try and make some more plays. They're replacing their corners. They've got a Georgia guy named Chris Peel, pretty highly touted, coming in. He's got good size. And then to counter David Reese at 26, we have a 17-year-old starting at their other corner, true freshman, was not like a 5-star guy either. He reclassified Demetrius Samuel. So also another guy with good touch. They like big corners, which isn't surprising. Fran Brown coached with Matt Rule. He coached with
Mm,
Shiano,
mm.
coached with Kirby Smart. So I would imagine there's going to be some bump and run coverage.
Yeah, get physical. And again, like I don't want pure cupcake for our receivers right now. I want them to be tested. And so let's see it, y'all. I mean, this is your opportunity early on because if it doesn't come now, it's coming from Georgia in a couple of weeks. And so we might as well get some work in now, put some stuff on tape.
Another thing
Another
I would
thing.
mention is their door wide open. That would be really interesting because I don't see or haven't heard or could find like a true starter there. That job seems open. It was a concern among their fan base. So will be interesting to see if that is something Tennessee will attack. If they maybe try and do, target the slot. I think, they liked Thornton over the middle last year a few times. Maybe they try and do that with Mike Matthews or Staley. And then another thing, just kind of consider We didn't talk about our special teams unit. That would probably would have been a fun summer conversation. We have to pick and choose. But, Gilbert and Ross are perfectly capable, solid players. Their kicking was a disaster last year. They went 13 and 22 in field goals and a
Yeah.
lot of short misses. Could be interesting, but you mentioned the fourth down talk. Ball at the 30, fourth and 3. Is Fran Brown gonna go for it because he doesn't trust his kicker? I think that is a definite possibility.
I think so. And I think the other thing I would love to see if we have, you know, young but promising and relatively physically gifted wide receivers, and then a front for Syracuse that doesn't seem like they always set an edge or doesn't seem like they always hold up. Let's hand the ball to a wide receiver and see if they can find some space. Like a guy like Matthews, bring him on an end around, bring him on a little shovel pass. And I don't mean to be like cutesy, like don't do it on 2nd and 9, but you're going to be able to get downhill running the ball. And so then using the wide receivers and getting the ball in their hands when they might not have all the routes polished, I would love to see it. And that goes back to like the dynamism that we talked about that we want to see from the play calling. I don't want like a cutesy telegraphed Devin Young screen. I want an in tempo shovel pass to a former 4 or 5 star wide receiver that gets on the edge and runs past the secondary. I really hope that we see some tempo to lead to some openings.
Justin Harrell, Devin Young,
Yeah.
your 2025 Tennessee previews. The last thing I want to mention on Syracuse defense, they run a 4-2-5 base. Now, Vol fans who know a lot about the program are thanking the Lord because apparently we can't do anything against a 3-3-5, but we're fantastic against 4-2-5. So, but I'm very curious if Brown, who seems to favor man, if he's going to go more zone and load the box, which seems risky with his back seven, but I could see it happening if Tennessee, that first drive, is pounding the rock.
We'll have, like we said last time, there will be guys running free.
Yes.
And I hope we have a guy who's willing to throw it.
Yes. So I want to hear what you think score wise first. 'Cause I think you're a tad more optimistic than me overall. So I kind of want to get your feel on it.
My score, and I stayed roughly within this range the whole time. I landed on 38-18. And that comes from funky score week one is part of it. But I think that's going to be a little bit of they're going for some fourth downs. They're not utilizing their kicking game and maybe even going for two a little bit. They make one of those, they miss one of those, they get to 18 and try to get to 20, and maybe we stop them. And so it's not like some wild prediction that there's just a funky score. And I think there's going to be some funky parts of this game. I think when I think back to NC State last year, and I know it's a totally different team, totally different season, but our offense didn't hit massive stuff that game down the field, and we got to pretty massive score.
Mhm.
I think the way we're going to be able to run the ball, we can get close to 40. And so that's maybe optimistic, but it would be a nice showing.
It'll be interesting to see how much Fran Brown uses from Kirby since he was the DB coach at Georgia for 2 years
Yep.
while Heupel was at Tennessee. So, like, there's some stuff to glean from there. I went 34-20.
Okay.
Not quite as confident in the passing game. I want to see it first. Not saying that they won't put up some numbers. I think if worst comes to worst, Heupel will just give it to Lewis and Thomas and Bishop, 15 times each and just go from there. I think they should be good. I think I'm giving them some credit offensively just because I respect what they did last year. And Angeli has talent. It's not some 3-star kid bringing in a transfer portal. Angeli what probably could have been the Notre Dame starter this year, maybe, maybe. And they've got some wide receiver talent. So I think they can put up some points. I do want to see just what the secondary looks like. I like our secondary. Just want to see how that gels in week one. Boo Carter is going to play. Hypo confirmed on Monday.
Mm.
So I think it could be a little bit. Maybe I'm giving a little too much credit to Syracuse's offense, considering how much they lost. Maybe it'll be 34-14, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's the third quarter and this is the game.
Yeah, I don't think I would be either, despite my prediction. The Angeli thing is the classic portal moment where you don't know if, okay, is he gone from Notre Dame's campus because he kind of got fed up and he would have won the starting job, and so he wanted to go somewhere where he knew he'd play and wouldn't be in a controversy? or is he gone because he wasn't going to win the starting job and he wanted to go somewhere where he would play? And so I think we'll learn a lot about that on Saturday. Let me say this: if we hold him to 18, or especially if we hold him to less, it's going to be an impressive day from our defense. People are going to think it's run of the mill. No, this team could score 25 on us. This team could score 31 on us. And so part of the reason I landed 18 is because I don't think they're going to kick field goals. I think they're going to try and score touchdowns and maybe even some late. If we hold them to 18, if we hold them under 20, that will be, with the things we're still sorting out in the back end, and the not knowing where Boo's going to be and things like that for camp, I would be really impressed.
I would be shocked if this is Virginia 2023 or NC State 2024.
Yeah.
Shocked. I'm not saying Tennessee can't pull away late or Tennessee comes out 23 and shocks them and then it's like 31-10. Like that could definitely happen. I I just would be shocked if it's like game over at halftime, like it was the last 2 years against our
Yeah.
ACC opponents.
Yours is more like a two-score game that, the run game finally wears them down in the late third, early fourth, and mine is more like three-score game where we've hit on some things, and that's a meaningful difference. I'm excited to see kinda who has it sniffed out better.
I think it will be like between NC State and between overall
Yeah,
from 2022, where it's like yeah, we could have played better, but still came up with a good victory. And this would be a nice win. This is not Dino Babers, Greg Robinson, Syracuse. This is a team that could have won the ACC last year with a couple more breaks.
yeah.
So I would say if they can come out with a double digit win, I'll be happy. If it's like 24-21, I might start panicking, especially if we can't run the ball. But overall, Heupel's teams have always been prepared game one and against out of conference opponents. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident in a victory overall.
If you think back to those pit games, even 22, like when we were taking off eventually, if anybody acts like they weren't horrendously nervous for the entire game, they're lying. Those were
People
terrifying games.
forget because the LSU game was such a wipeout that Pitt game was overtime.
Pit game
That
was like Cedric Tillman, thank goodness he's good at boxing out.
yes, he did. He had to have 170 yards in that game for them to win. They they've got to come out and play. They cannot.
I'm glad it's not in
Yes,
Syracuse. I'm glad it's not there. I
yes.
think our if we've got any kind of road woes, they would play up there.
Mhm.
And we're probably going to have obviously like a little bit of a home field advantage in these neutral site quote unquote games. But I mean, there are teams that would mess around and lose this game, and I hope we're not one of
Absolutely.
them.
Absolutely. I mean, I just think too. I do wish it was the second game. I bet Syracuse is probably thinking the same thing. Like, man, it'd be nice if we could get Angeli and these wide receivers and their offensive line. They got like 7 guys fighting for 4 spots. Like they're only settled at right tackle with Weatherspoon. So I think that they would really, they kind of wish like, hey, I wish we had week one just to settle who's on the offensive line, get everyone in a rhythm. But Tennessee's kind of in the same spot. They've lost 4 starting offensive linemen. They have a new quarterback and 3 new wide receivers. So it's not really that much difference. It's just Tennessee's more talented than Syracuse overall.
Yeah, and so we're going to shift to things that we may regret depending on the results of this Syracuse game. We'll see whether we want to take some words back here, but we also want to predict our overall season record and think about, does that put us in a possibility for playoffs, or who else do we think could sneak into the playoffs, and who do we have less faith in? We don't have to go game by game. We don't need to analyze what we think might happen mid-September in the UAB game. Let's kick it off. I landed at 9-3. Where did you land record-wise?
Do you remember the 2006 season?
Yes, because I thought we were going to win the national championship.
They lose to Florida in a 1-point heartbreaker. They get stomped by Arkansas because Ainge sprains his ankle, and then they lost another super close game that year.
I'll look it up. You go.
And so I wonder. I wrote 9-3 as well. I put 1-score loss against Georgia. I put Alabama offense struggles, and then I put Florida. I want to believe that was
So,
my thing. And I gave them the Oklahoma, although Oklahoma's been a sneaky, like this team could really surprise. I think, anything below 8-4, and I'm going to get a little worried about the program.
I have 9-3, so we landed in very similar places. And I'll tell you what, it wouldn't take much for me to go to 8-4. I'd be more likely to go to 8-4 than I would be 10-2. I'll say it that way.
I want to hear your reasoning for that.
I mean, I have 9-3, and I have us beating Georgia, and I like. I think it's possible. I do, but if you ask me, like, okay, what's the inflection point here? I think it's more likely to go down one than up one. I have us beating Georgia. I have us losing to Oklahoma. The one thing that's working for us in that Oklahoma game is it is right in the middle of a stretch for Oklahoma that I do not envy. And so Oklahoma during that stretch is playing, I'm pulling it up real quick. They go Texas, they go South Carolina, they go Ole Miss, and then they come to Neyland, and then they have a bye week, and then they go to Tuscaloosa. But I think they're going to get somebody in that stretch, and it could be us.
2006 LSU, Jamarcus Russell fumbles, and the refs decide not to rip. Crompton comes in and looks like Peyton Manning. I remember now.
Yep.
It's funny how you forget, like, who'd they lose to? And now I literally 10 plays are playing through my head. It's funny how sports works. Yeah, I think Oklahoma's got a chance to be really good. It's like it's going to be 6-6 or 10-2. Like they're a playoff team, or Venables is packing his bags, which sometimes it doesn't work like that. It just feels like that, though. And I think that's because I just don't know what their ceiling is. I would say Georgia, if they're going to get them, this might be the year because of where they are in the schedule. It's like Georgia, third game with Joey Aguilar. And it's like, oh, Gunnar Stockton's going to have to come to Neyland. That's going to be his first real road game. You know, they've got some question marks on defense for like the first time in ages, just with who's going to play. You know, they're replacing a lot of draft losses over the last couple of years. You know, Mike Bobo at any time that offense could be like, they have 140 yards through 3 quarters. So that would be the game if Tennessee could win that. I put it as the first 1-score game against Kirby in the Heupel era. If they could pull that off, and then they get UAB, Mississippi State, Arkansas at home, you're talking 6-0 here going against Alabama and Tuscaloosa. Like that might be the turning point if they can get Georgia. We talked about Florida last episode, how big of a game that is. I just think I've got to see it. And the Heupel road woes make me hesitant. I actually think it's possible. I would not shun you out of the building if you're like, I think Georgia's a more likely win than Florida.
Florida is also one that, like, they start with cupcakes, and you know, we have our fair share of cupcakes. I'm not throwing shade there, but that's so far away now that it's like I can't think about those early season results. Usually, like, we're analyzing everything we can for Florida right away because we're playing them so early that we're like, we have to know if we have a chance. I'm going to try to just have it out of sight, out of mind. And then I'll start thinking about it a couple weeks out, like based on where we are, where they are. If I think about it too early, I'll torture myself.
Yes.
And so, you know, I think maybe it's telling about the questions we have that, like, we both have losses to Bama and Florida. Maybe they're close, but we both have losses to Bama and Florida. Those are the two, like, big road games. And then we kind of fall differently on what happens in Neyland, and you know, it's impossible to predict. It's funny. I sit here and I say, okay, so we're 6-0 and we're going to Tuscaloosa, and maybe Ty Simpson's had a stumble here or there. Why can't we win that game?
Right.
But then I'm like, okay, so are we going to be 8-0 hosting Oklahoma right after Halloween? Because if we're 8-0 hosting Oklahoma right after Halloween, I don't think we're going to lose to Oklahoma.
Yes, I know.
And like this is the game you play, but I don't know.
The other part I would say is I think this is a really nice schedule for Tennessee. I would rather, just thinking about it, get Georgia in September at home than Florida on the road, third game of the year.
Yeah, it being on the road, the flip is nice.
It is. Does that mean I wouldn't be shocked if Georgia beat us 31-14 because we just can't figure out their defense. No, but the schedule sets up nice. I know we lost to Arkansas last year. I think it's going to be a 2023 South Carolina-esque beatdown. I think that team's going to be hyped up for that game. No offense to Jeff Lebby and that crew. They're 2 years away from being 2 years away. If Tennessee lost that game, then we were shutting down the podcast. So um, that's a joke. I'm just kidding. But with Mississippi State, Arkansas, they get Kentucky on the road. Heupel has not lost to Kentucky. Vanderbilt comes to Neyland. I'll believe it when I see it. As long as Heupel's undefeated against Kentucky Vanderbilt. So I'm marking those as wins. Maybe that's cocky. That's just how I view it. So like I said, anything below 8-4, I will be concerned because that means they lost to one of those 4 SEC teams, or they lost to Syracuse, which means they weren't ready for the start of the year, which brings up a whole nother set of problems. And also probably means that Joey Aguilar is not good.
Yeah. And I think
and I don't want to think about that.
No, like let's get to Saturday.
Yeah.
Us sitting at 9-3, I think there's no way to slice it other than we would be on some sort of weird bubble related to the playoff in ways that I don't feel like analyzing right now. I don't care to know. I'm not going to care at all what the committee says about any of that. We'll just see how it shakes out. And so we're kind of both on that bubble. Are there any other, and these can be quick, like we don't have to predict, the entire seeding, but are there any other playoff thoughts you have? And it doesn't have to be Tennessee related, just like a sleeper you have, someone you feel like is bound to be there, someone you feel like is being overrated, anything like that.
I would write Penn State and Ohio State in. Just go ahead and mark them in.
Schedule and talent.
Yeah, schedule and talent. I would be shocked if Clemson did not get in somehow with this team in the ACC.
I will say, like, that's an ACC thing, but I also think they're pretty darn good.
They're stacked. They had a down year last year roster wise. They really picked it back up this year.
Those wide receivers are gross. That quarterback is good. That defense is nasty. Bring your own guts versus Brian Kelly. I might have a lean there.
I will be taking the guts.
Yeah, and then I think that there's chance they're going to beat the crap out of some teams, I think.
They absolutely are. I put SMU. I think Brett actually might be the most underrated coach.
Keep some momentum going.
I think they can do that. Their schedule breaks nicely. I'll say this. I didn't love any of my SEC choices.
So Texas is in the, like, they're going to earn it boat. We talked about that a little bit. And
yeah,
I think that's kind of
that off spot. That schedule is brutal.
It's brutal, and like Arch isn't a given, and that's not even me being a hater. It's like acting like he's about to go run that schedule is. We've seen it too many times.
They lost a lot. Now they've replaced it. They have Georgia level, Alabama's under Saban level depth, but they've still got to prove it. Those guys got to prove it. Alabama, the Ty Simpson thing.
I know.
I don't know. Like DeBoer's never been bad at quarterback, but it's weird that they went with him and he couldn't beat out Milroe. And if you talk to an Alabama fan, Milroe, the worst quarterback to ever take the field.
The worst quarterback to ever beat out your new star quarterback.
Yes, exactly. I know. And then I Georgia, it's like, I didn't like anything I saw from Mike Bobo last year. And he was uncreative in 2010. How does he have a job as an offense coordinator at Georgia? So I didn't like any of them. Like I thought about Oklahoma, but I don't know if Venables is a good coach. LSU, well, I don't trust Brian Kelly. It's like Tennessee. Well, Aguilar, I don't know what. Just as a non-Tennessee fan, like I 4 offensive linemen, 3 new wide receivers, and a new quarterback doesn't sound like success. So I think it's wide open, the SEC. I think it's going to be insane.
You know how uncertain I am about this is that I wound up writing these words down. I think the ACC might be pretty good.
I think so too.
I don't know. Like I think like SMU. I think Louisville is gonna. I would not want to play Louisville. I talked a little bit about Miami last episode, and I don't have a ton of faith in Carson Beck, but they're a talented roster. Clemson is potentially the best team in the country. I don't know. I don't want to go like ranking for ranking in conference standings, but the ACC is not how. If anybody's telling you the ACC is a complete joke, they're wrong. I guess is my opinion.
There's a random 7-1 Pat Narduzzi start that seems to happen every year.
Yes.
Dave Doran could win 9 games again. Belichick's in North Carolina. Bill O'Brien's at Boston College. I thought he did a nice job. And Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech with Haynes King
Experience.
almost kicked Georgia out of the playoff
I
last year.
know. Gosh, you know they got to be licking their chops for that game.
Exactly. So I think personally the ACC is going to have a say. I think it would not shock me if we're in mid-November and people are like, is the ACC going to get 3 teams in?
Yeah. Yeah. The other big news that dropped this week, SEC focused, is the shift starting in 2026 to a 9-game conference schedule. This is something we've been basically clamoring for a long time.
Yes.
Let's get a little more balance. Let's get a little less silliness in this. The main part of that, we can talk through all the like nooks and crannies of it, but the main part of it is having the 3 consistent conference opponents and then the other rotating. Where do you land on who you think Tennessee's 3 consistent opponents will be and then who you want them to be?
Alabama and Vandy are a must.
Have to do it. Have to do it.
Which is hilarious. Because
we've lost the plot if that's not the start.
Which again is hilarious because it's the best team in the SEC historically and the worst one. But
well, give me both, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, right. So Alabama has been the premier rivalry with Tennessee and the SEC. It was for decades. Post World War II, that was the best rivalry in the South. That has to say they played every year since World War II. Vandy's in state. They are 3 hours away. I get it. I understand it. They are historically bad. Should be noted, we went 10-6 against them in a 16-year period. So it's not like you can automatically just be like, oh, we're going to win 25 in a row or whatever it was with Fulmer and Majors.
That's the bad place.
Yes, that was the bad place. I agree. But again, in state 3, if they were like if it was Memphis instead of Vanderbilt, I can understand the argument. It's 3 hours. I think that needs to stay. The third one, it probably should be Kentucky by historical significance.
Like a traditional perspective.
Right. That's another 100-year plus rivalry. I am fine if the SEC is going, hey, we're hearing it from the other ADs about Kentucky and Vanderbilt, and we can't have you have both. And it was like, we're giving you Florida. I would not complain about that. I think that's a good matchup. Yes, it's not something that was played pre-1992, but we understand that 10-year run with Fulmer and Spurrier was magic, right? I don't have a problem if it's Florida. I don't think it's going to be Georgia, but wouldn't have a problem there. If it's South Carolina, I'm going to whine about it a little bit.
It's a weird one.
We played them, for 30 years. We didn't last year, but before that, I would be fine with Florida over Kentucky. And if it's Kentucky, I'm not going to complain either. I know there's been a couple like play the best, blah, blah, blah. It's just not going to, that's not how it's going to work. You're going to have to make compromises.
We spent enough years with Alabama and Georgia on our schedule that I'm like, give us Kentucky. I'm not going to apologize, but the games would be more fun if it was Florida. We're going to have to beat good teams no matter what. Let's go to Gainesville and try to get the monkey off our back. Like, bring it on.
And you're going to play them every 2 years. It's not going to be Georgia still hasn't gone to Aggie land, and it's been 14 years. You're not going to have that, with this new schedule setup. So even if we have to sacrifice the Kentucky game for Florida, I think it's fine. You're still playing them every 2 years. South Carolina would just make me mad. I don't like them.
It's a stupid middle ground.
It is. Like, if you're going to give me,
there are 2 possible acceptable answers, and that is not one of them.
Agree. I would rather play Auburn than South Carolina.
Yeah.
For historical purposes, because we played them every year pre-1992. I just don't think South Carolina is a good answer. And really for them, it should be Kentucky, Georgia, and I would probably argue like Arkansas because they played each other every year because they came in at the same time. But really nothing other than South Carolina would upset me within the realm of possibility.
Yeah. Final thoughts here. And this stems from like a rant from me. This is one of those things that I'm being a little bit of a pedantic, annoying guy, but I'm correct. And I'm okay with that combination. One of my most favorite things is to be pedantic and annoying, but also be correct. The term generational has gotten out of hand. We have overused and misused and
Yes,
butchered this term
absolutely.
to where I don't think it even comes close to meaning what we want it to mean. And not even from a definitional perspective, but the way we use it isn't even the way we want to be talking about guys from a college football perspective or from a like draft profile perspective. I'm going to suggest that we reconsider and redefine the term generational, and I'll explain why. As someone with a young child right now, he's learning about the history of Tennessee football. He's learning about the history of football in general. The way that we are doing that, and it's the best thing in the world, is him coming to me and saying, "Who's your favorite guy? How good was this guy? Okay, well, you mentioned this guy yesterday. Who was better? Okay, well, you talked about this guy for the first time. Was he better than this guy? Is he one of the best of all time?" And we're talking like the Eric Berrys and the Peyton Mannings and things like that. I want to propose that instead of some like prototypical draft profile when we talk about generational, instead we lean into the generational aspect of it. And generational henceforth means the guy that we are excited to tell the next generation of college football fans about. Not generational talent. And like the guy who comes into my mind for that is like people said it about Trevor Lawrence. And if anything, he was like a carbon copy of a lot of like prototypical quarterbacks. And so he wasn't some combination of like unique and great. He was prototypical. And
Right.
sometimes I think that's actually what we mean. The talent that we are excited to pass down to the next generation of college football. With that in mind, I have a couple of examples from recent years. The person you'll be excited when the next generation comes and asks you, how good was this guy? And you're like, let me sit you down, buddy, because this is how good he was. I'm going to go through the last few years. Last year, I think Gene T and I think Travis Hunter. The year before, I think Brock Bowers. Maybe not the only one, but I think Brock Bowers.
Right. Yeah.
2022, and this is where it can get like fan base specific. I think Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt. Bam. They were generational
Yes.
Tennessee players, and frankly, maybe for the flash in the pan, generational players in general. 2022, I couldn't identify an individual player. The Georgia defense and the performance they had in the playoff that year is like, yeah, I don't like to talk about it, but it's the thing to talk about. And then you flash back to past years and like some obvious guys pop, like there's going to be a Cam Newton, there's going to be a Derrick Henry. Same year, there's going to be a Christian McCaffrey. I want to propose that it's not this guy has the best combine profile. Instead, it is this is the guy I'm most excited to talk to the next generation about. With that definition in mind, if I can shift us to it, who is the guy that fits the bill for you this year that you think you're going to be excited to tell the next generation of fans about?
Yeah, and I wanted to let you cook on this segment because you're really good at these kind of conversations. The really quick point, Hunter. Unfortunately, Dion did the opposite of what he
I
was supposed
know.
to do. I think in 10 years we're going to realize like that was insane what he actually did. So I
Absolutely
think
nuts.
like he will get credit for what he actually did. To answer your question, to me it's Jeremiah Smith, and he is not this freak athlete of the Calvin Johnson, a generational
There you
player
go. Absolutely.
there. But I've never seen a freshman wide receiver so complete. And if you were to make an argument that there should not be an age limit
I know.
in the NFL draft, it would be him. He would have been wide receiver one in this draft. And
Absolutely.
he didn't have like a monster game against Tennessee. But after that first catch is like, ooh, we could be in trouble. And we have a great corner in Jermon McCoy. I think he's the guy that I would pick on this list over anyone. And I think part of it too is just with all the quarterback COVID transfer stuff, it's hard to pick a quarterback because everyone's kind of leaning veteran now. You mentioned about the freshman last episode and how important recruiting is. It's guys like him. That is a player who changes the culture and a guy who won the national title for them last year with I wouldn't say an insane play, but when you look at the beginning, how he beat him, how he made the adjustment, really incredible for a freshman.
For a freshman wide receiver
Mhm.
in an offense that had other skill guys to put his stamp on not just the national championship, but an entire playoff like that is, I think it's funny. I racked my brain here to choose someone that is draft eligible, because I was like, okay, like it's gonna be really fun if we can then track like what it looks like in the draft, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know that I have a better name than Jeremiah Smith. And I'm glad you landed on it. And so it's not like me just spamming that name. But I don't think any of the quarterbacks rise to that level. And I think he's already risen to that level. And of course we'll see if he can keep it up. But he's already, I mean, think about the OSU wide receivers that have been in front of us in recent years. I'm not trying to be caught in the moment, but I think we take him over maybe every single one of them. And that's a list right there.
Yeah, I think I would too. And I mean, again, they've had, not even including Jameson Williams, who was there for 2 years
Yeah.
and couldn't get starts. I think he'd be a clear number one. He's got a chance to be that Fitzgerald, Calvin Johnson. Julio should be in that conversation. He's just not, because of the Alabama offense they ran. He's going to be in those groups where you're talking last like 25 years, like best wide receivers we've seen. He'll be up there. I like watching him, which is saying something, because I hate Ohio State.
I was going to say,
yeah. Like I will watch him run routes all day. Like it makes me be like, could the Lions like trade 3 first-round picks in his draft? Or like, I think somebody would be willing to give up a couple first for him, for a wide receiver move up is crazy. But I think he's the one guy. Absolutely.
It's interesting. And this is like heading into the weekend. We have the Tennessee game at noon. We have the 1v2. One of the big places that Texas lost a couple guys is that secondary.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just talked about, like, if they make it to the playoff, they are going to earn it. And they're going to get to start earning it against our newly defined generational guy for the year in Jeremiah Smith. And if they do it, props to them. We'll be talking about it next week.
Give me a quick 30-second. What's the story from Tennessee, Syracuse Sunday morning?
I think the story is the run game, and we hit a deep shot. I think we will, and maybe that's why I landed on the slightly higher score. I think we will hit something downfield. We will have at least 2 explosive plays in the pass game.
Mine, best defensive line since Chavis was defensive coordinator.
I hope they shine, man.
I think that's got a chance, even without Hobbs. I really do. I think
it's a weird under the radar game, because it's like because of what else is happening at noon, because you're coming off a game day. I don't think as many people are going to be talking about Tennessee, but I think our performance is these guys aren't affected by that. I think they're going to be ready to go.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. When we release this, it'll be about 36 hours, I think.
I know,
man.
I made it.
Yes, we made it. Yes, I made it. I like that better. I made it.
We have some games on Thursday after this won't be out yet, but that are watchable, like entertaining. But then Saturday and Sundays when you really go like sicko mode.
Great slate.
It's a good slate. The 3:30 slate is like you can catch up on Texas, Ohio State, or you can cheer against Alabama, and then you got an amazing primetime game, and then you got
good game Sunday.
Great game Sunday, and I'm glad it's a primetime late game. And you've also got Virginia Tech, South Carolina on Sunday.
Yes, Sunday afternoon.
The afternoon slate, and then the late game on the Pac-12 after dark, whatever conference they're in now, it's still Pac-12 after dark to me, is Utah UCLA.
11 o'clock Saturday. The hate watch will be real.
I know. Like, if you are thirsty for more football and you're thirsty for haterade, then there is a game that will satisfy. It will quench that thirst.
It might break the Vol Nation record for around the NCAA thread that didn't involve a playoff game. Or
I know. The servers need to be ready at 11:54 on Saturday night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I hope Freak bought a little more bandwidth.
He's got, unlimited funds there.
We're not talking about Nico to finish this.
No, we're not.
No.
Who scores the first touchdown this season? We'll go out on that.
Let's just do Mike Matthews.
I was going to say the same thing.
Let's just have fun with it. Mike Matthews, little 15-yard post route.
Find some space, buddy. I can't wait to watch.
Second drive.
Perfect. Send them out, Zack.
All right. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. We are excited here. The plan's on release these on Thursday. We're going to have a full review for the Syracuse games there. Hopefully it'll be a ball win, and we're going to have a great time watching Saturday. Go Balls.